Hey guys, welcome to another podcast of the Empower Tactical. So I'm very honored today. I've got our co-founder of Empower Tactical, Emma Health, Emma with us, and we also have a legendary of karate. We call him the father of karate in Australia. So Mr. Tino Ceberano, how are you?
As good as can be expected. Thank you very much. Yeah,
it's great. So we're very proud and very honored to have you on this podcast today. Thank you so much for making this time in such a short notice to be with us today.
Yep, we're certainly on and ready, willing, and able. Let's get
with it. So look, it's going to be a very informal conversation. We want everyone to feel at ease. Just for you to know that we have developed Empower Tactical. One of the main reasons is because we want to utilize the mindset of a martial arts and obviously utilizing health and fitness to empower men, women, and children. Because I always believe most of the people that will listen to this podcast may know or not, but I teach traditional Wing Chun Kung Fu. But growing up, since I was a kid, I always was fascinated with karate, and that was my first martial arts. And the discipline, the respect, and everything that the values of the martial art that it teaches you, I was always fascinated by. And I think it has inspired me to be the person who I am today. And contributing Empower Tactical is obviously tactical means the tactical part of empowering men and women and children, which is Emma is obviously the focus of the health and fitness. And I'd like to bring more of the tradition out of it. And you're such a role model figure, especially here in Australia. And we would like to learn a little bit more about the strong mindset that you have contributed to this art in Australia, especially, and obviously for all your journeys. So can you start by telling us, because most people do know and some don't, who is Tino Ceberano?
Yeah, okay.
Your turn to talk.
Yeah, and it's a very good topic, the likes of the mindset, especially to do what happens to be a very, very noted point of why martial art and how it is, in fact, when we talk about martial art in a general and broad way of study. Yeah, I'll pick you up. Yeah, a broad study. And I say broad study, we'll take, for instance, a comparison to what was the origin of the Olympics. Wasn't the actual peacetime warriors of Greece, the peacetime warriors of Greece, the origin and creators of what had been the ideal of what the Olympics became?
Absolutely.
And it became something of a martial art from the likes of what it was in the military regimental type of training, right?
Yes.
To that of skills that were made up, with all those weaponry or whatever combative style that they had, that made what the art factor, creating elite sports person. So in a general sense, there was something that had to be noted, and this is where the art factor, and even following through our tradition of our martial art, and I'll clarify some other points there. Tradition of our martial art is the aesthetics, what it is of how we even look at it as why the word do, as in the Japanese language, or Tao, as in the Chinese language. And I clarify the Tao and the Do as being similarity because it was the Chinese that originated the likes of how karate became of what it is. Now, getting back into the likes of the martial art in that sense, we seem to fall short of why the martial art has taken, and I say taken precedent in the likes of how we have been searching for many years of the conduct of the very warrior and how it was explained as we've been taught and how it had been from the older teaching, etc., that there was specific disciplines that we've had to follow, that this was in fact very much clearly put as the science, the very in-depth study of how we should be conducting ourselves and what was the code that they have developed. And through till this very time exists the code of courtesy, the code of respect, and the
Absolutely.
very discipline. And this is where I'm coming from, that in a modern time of our present era of martial arts, and of course the generation now that we've developed progressively, this has become something where we're taking note of what it is that perhaps may be missing, or perhaps I would put it as a stigma that happens to be put against the martial artist, the martial practitioner, the, the very actual training that exists that makes people of the martial art special breed. And I say a special breed. I think, in fact, being a former teacher myself, I can very well profess to see how it did a lot of students for my teaching at the high school that I taught at. This was in Wattle Park back in Melbourne in the late 60s, right?
Wow.
That they've come back with even testimonials of how they've, not only accepted what I had to offer, but what I did created for them in their lifestyles leading up to their success and their present time existence in their vocations as well.
That's this is what we're here for, and what you've said, I think it's incredible, because I believe that the new generation nowadays, they have it a little bit too easy. It's a little bit too soft,
Well,
and it is, because you hear, like, you put your hands and say to your kids, because we have kids around, and it was, hey, don't do this, and the attitude, and they'll look up to you thinking, I know my rights. I'm thinking, hang on a second, where's the respect? Wait,
yes. You see, I think there's a thing here as well that the martial artists, of course, and what it is of the the people interested as the lay people, the people that are not yet introduced into the martial art, they've got to make quite clear distinction on what it is that they approach onto the what, the why, and the how.
Yeah.
On those three very words and principles of how they should accomplish this. The first thing, it is quite clear that we have in our martial arts a particular confusion of what it is of the commercialism from the professionalism. And when we say professionalism, that's encountering how we learn and what knowledge have we gained. But in the knowledge that we've gained, we've got to also follow up with the responsibility of our sharing it to those people out there, the young ones, the women,
absolutely.
those people that are out there to learn self-defense, etc., as a prime objective.
Yeah.
Okay, and all when this knowledge comes through, and with the likes of responsibility of qualified instructors, people taking real quality to teaching, comes control. Control of self, control of others, and what we have then in the unit of our martial arts code, those very things. Now,
That's true.
yeah, I want to pick up on this because it's something that I've done a lot of research on.
Please.
How many people understand the actual lead up to the very word martial? And why is it that even connected up chronologically with many of the ethnic groups and from all over the world, and how it is that from the time of our origin, how we began into the cohabitation of our tribes, etc., we've come to grips with having to mold or bond or bring about our need for assisting each other in lieu of protection, in lieu of why we've had to work and locate ourselves in defense. They've come on with always looking at something of an ideal, something to project their interest. The nearest planet to ours, we've named as Mars. Something that had been very much a very cluey word that created the word martial, or what military was all about. The regimentation of people getting together to really learn, etc.
Wow.
And then from that, what we got as the distinct nature of how the study had been integrated, being placed in all the different countries.
Wow. It's
That fire the imagination.
You've got so much wealth of knowledge to share.
Yeah.
You know, you should get back onto it and spread the word out there that you're still running the show.
Are you still doing motivational speaking at all?
Yes, well, I am, and when I'm called on at best, and I also have conducted what it is another innovation of mine was the executive survival fitness course. This is for the white collar workers, right? Getting on to learning about the self-defense related to their work, relating to their place of work, and for themselves personally in engaging themselves in being motivated to carry on.
Yes. That sounds very much into the same line of what I'm into.
Yeah. Well, you see, it is very much a definite line of work that I felt actually it was like a calling. It's something of a mission that I see myself as I'm now, like getting on, but still able, willing and able, etc. But I've got to project this because it's how I put it, right? It's a connection, right? To make the projection, etc. And that's how it has come.
That's great.
I must ask an apology because the doctor called, for my wife to get down to the clinic, and I like it's already dark here. I wouldn't want her to be walking down to the clinic. Is there a chance that we could maybe continue our talk maybe tomorrow morning?
Of course. I'll be happy to do so. We'll be happy to do so. But before we finish, do you have 2 minutes? I just want to ask you, just so I can close up this chapter, and I really appreciate your time. In terms of the mindset of the people that's going through this pandemic at the moment, as a martial artist yourself, what would you advise people to help them to reset themselves, utilizing the martial art mindset that you had for so many years being in Australia? Obviously, you lived in Melbourne yourself. You've been through different era of generation, going through different pandemic. What advice would you have for these people to pick themselves up?
It is really important that we've got to, firstly, like in creating how it is that we've got to, on our mindset, we've got to make certain that we are still being having the be or being what we are as martial artists. And when doing or having to create what it is of our physical activities and all that, there's rules, there's the likes of how we command ourselves in that respect with order, etc. And we've got to follow that, right? And then on having that, on really possessing that, it happens to be that we must share it because we care, and then we've got to dare to do better than good. We are somewhat, like responsible people with that respect of how we see. A lot of people don't realize this, but we are like surrogate parents. We are like counselors. We are like the leaders that, really dwell with how it is of our belief. Being example. We've got to be example of that.
Absolutely.
So again, Henshi, we're so grateful to have you here for our show for Empower Tactical. What's so important and ingrained in me, as it sounds like yourself, you were talking about a calling. And that's exactly how I feel. Like I have a calling to help influence and positively influence people with their health, their fitness, and their mindset. Because we know that our mindset is a big part of success in life and true happiness. So we're really grateful that we can use the martial art blueprint as
Oh,
a
yeah.
mental mindset for our entire holistic approach on healthcare. So we can get fit, we can get healthy, we can learn self-defense, we can practice the martial arts if we wish, and really take it like one level or all the way through. So you were mentioning that you're a teacher, and so you've spent some 50 years positively influencing people, like with your teaching, with your martial arts instructing. So how does that make you feel to be such an amazing positive influence on so many people?
It's gratifying so much as like, like it's not only as a refurbishment to what it is of life, etc., but it reinforces what, objectives that have been given as a mindset. We talk about the mindset and how it is that we've related to how it all began in this particular journey, having the martial art like as a bit of a guide on. And from the earlier years when it was very much into that, almost like a secret, that this martial art had something even deeper than what it was of the physical aspect.
Yeah.
And that related to when we talk about the mindset as being related to the words of the mind, the body, and the soul.
Mhm.
Well, I've often looked at what had been my upbringing over in Hawaii during the time of the war and post-war, and then getting on, etc., as I was, getting on in life, etc., and the martial arts had been influenced into our lifestyle. We saw the likes of not so much as violence. We in Hawaii, we felt so well, I suppose, when we say comfortable, integrated, and that with a sort of multicultural, get-togethers. And I mean, really get-togethers. We felt like family. And yet, and then even though when we got into our martial art, it was like a game, like a play. So as I was getting on in life, into seeing what and what is it that makes this really happen into the martial artist and his aspiring thoughts on the objectives. Why did I want to be a martial art?
Yeah.
And then the wanting to be, right? And then now having to do something about it, getting into the martial arts, like as in training, study, and following all of what was necessarily put to you in influence. It was a build-up. There was something much deeper than just physical education.
Yeah.
Your
Totally.
health was just so important. I joined the Marines at the age of 17.
I was just about to bring this up right now because I thought being part of the high school, which is obviously not only you need martial arts, but you need a discipline and attitude. And also, I think it was in the late 60s that you did the False Creek summer camp.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I thought, oh my God, all we need is a Marine to be able to come on, get out on your knees, do some push-ups. And I think, who's going to say no to that?
I can tell you what, it never occurred to me, right, that the likes of, I suppose, my persona, even being like as I am, I'm sort of, I suppose, cheerful bugger when it comes to that. I'm not so much as like really getting onto humor and all that, but when it becomes like sharing and really having a good time with it, I thought, well, the only way these people will get to know about me is to see the rough side. The rough side. The old
And you loved it.
the old Marine Corps, training that I've had, and how it had been like in preparation for, even combat if it was necessary, etc. It was really, really difficult. And having to put that to what it was of the Australian, particularly with you, foreigner, a wog. I put it at the time, when it was unusual that, we had a lot of foreigners out here coming into it and like migrating, but so much as somebody like myself, and having to incorporate this sort of training Well, it was taken on, and we enjoyed it. They enjoyed it. They liked, that very thought of discipline of getting up 5:30 in the morning and getting to bed at lights out 10 o'clock. But everything had to be. And that, the discipline not only brought about what of correct duty, but how they came to understand later in life, and this was even projected by many who even till this very day, like Soke Richard Norton, one of my first students. He was there at that camp as well. No, not the first camp, sorry. He wasn't there, but he was already there in our dojo training.
Wow.
And how they grew up, I say they, and as well as what had been of another student of mine there that came to camp, another colleague that is now into the dojo study, Max Fabrice, his name is. He's at then. These people have, really gained sight of what I was on about. And I collect now what it is sometimes of, influential words by people, such as this one that I picked up along the way, right? We live by choice, not by chance.
Yeah.
Make changes, not excuses.
That's right. We basically live like that as well. It's all a choice. It's your choice. And you have an action, and then you have the consequence to that action.
That's it. You see, it's necessary that we see this in light of what, again, of, doing, right? And then later, as we accomplish even that level of how we now putting together ourselves with others, etc. But being example of what we teach, what we believe, is having to bring that as heaviness, bringing to get that as a possession of which now must be contained. And that is where I say, I share because I care, and I dare to do better than good.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah,
that's again coming from the earlier years of discipline. For my years of right up to 1969, I never had women training in my dojo, simply because it was too difficult. Simply because, the regimen of our training was, push-up, hundreds of them, sit-ups, even some, the likes of how it was, like as I've learned as well, how it was my influence being a Marine. It went really hard. Then the guys, the students' wives would say,
yeah. The tables have turned now. We're keeping up and leading ourselves.
Yeah, they said, why not teach we women as well, so that we can be part of it, and then our children as well. And that is certainly how it all began. Because I also became a teacher, a PE teacher at Wattle Park High School there in Melbourne for a couple of years. And all during that time, I was one of the first karate instructor ever to implement martial art or karate into our schools.
That's
and this was really something that I look back on now. And in the Wattle Park High School group that has written up a lot of good, like testimonials as well over what. And this is a guy, one of my PE students, who became a PE teacher himself. And for 40 years, he's now just retired from PE teaching. For 40 years as a PE teacher, he puts it that it was through my influence that made him to become a PE teacher.
Oh, that's incredible.
There's a hell of a lot of testimonials that have come through that being even presented in my book. But again, we go into just that part of, like, why is it that this martial art, has a effect, as an effect of what I wouldn't say impinge, but imposes on a person's desire for the sort of discipline,
Yeah.
the sort of, like looking at oneself, making oneself before helping others. And
Yeah.
that's where we stand. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing. Do you think it's because it shows a lot of selflessness as well? And then they're pushing themselves to the limits and achieving goals in that teamwork environment where everyone can cheer for each other. And like you said, you care so much. That
Yeah.
obviously rubs off. Like the passion and the commitment to teaching rubs off on everybody because they feel the love, basically.
There you go. Now, you see, another thing that we as martial artists, particularly in the form of our senior ranking file, our teachers, our masters, and whoever, it's got to be understood, and we very well project this, that it becomes like as a family unit, that we're on what it is of creating this family to the very principle of affinity, love.
Yeah.
How did all of the martial art, etc., get started? If it wasn't for what family desiring of looking after themselves in protection of their privacy, their private, etc., your family, etc., right? That
Yeah.
this family came together and made what it is of that protective nature of looking after each other. And so that is one of the high principles of our martial arts activity.
Yeah.
And I believe it must, at this point in time, given that, I look at things of what is by way of sets of three. I call it the triology, the study of three progression or progressive elements, right?
Yeah.
We look at number one as intention, what it is from ourselves that we've got to bring about this with intention. Then we come on to attention, and how are we doing it? What it is that people out there would necessarily take it on, even from our own persona as we project this. And then comes, of course, the very projection of this abroad, a lot, for a lot of everyone.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. It's incredible. It's a great blueprint to live for, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
What
And
we
it
project to others is means so much, because if we have good intentions, we have decent good actions, and then we project goodness and kindness, then we're just putting all that positivity into the world with all of our expertise gathered and all our knowledge and all our journeys and lessons, and we're helping as many people as possible, as well as learning ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is, something that, I'm very, very thankful for, in which happens to be now very much a create as well, that needs to be, like brought out there. So we bring it out there with the innovation. And then comes our motivation by sticking it on them. Bring it on. Motive on carrying on the role and getting on that train and rock and
keep
roll.
going. And some of us, maybe like you and I and Super Damien, we're very self-motivated and driven. And other people just need someone to motivate them, which is no problem, but they need that support, and they need someone to say, come on, let's do this, you can do it, you got this.
Yes, I tell you what, it's a reward that I suppose, can never be matched. When we've done something that has not only elevated our spirit, but has been projected out there with someone taking on just that as well. It's always been taught to me by my father. If you want to really, have what I'm teaching you, you've got to share it as well. You've got to teach somebody. Teach somebody to be as good as yourself, if not better. And this is how it does in our martial arts as well.
That's the words of wisdom that I live by, and I always believe that every single great teacher wants to make someone else at the teaching better than who they are themselves. And this is what we do. I mean, the world itself. I mean, the word itself Empower Tactical is empowering people to be a better version of themselves. And, you know, and this is why we have people like you to come on the show with, who's still so passionate about what you do. And I think we want people to know, and I think I've mentioned this to you on numerous phone calls, that we have martial arts in the old days was all about respect, and we have to respect the people in the previous generation that implanted this respect in a new way in terms of the martial art discipline. Yourself, like you said, you had influenced so many great people who's got nothing to do with martial arts. They were in high school, you know. Yeah. And we want people to know it's important to respect these people who has helped us to do what we do today.
Yeah,
it's really important. It really
Absolutely.
is. And you know, I think, as what we would often say, the world is getting closer. You know, as in how, you know, we're becoming a lot more attached. But in this attachment, it's got to be by way of how we see our harmonizing effect, cohabitating with that very affinity that we need with each other. You know, this is something that is very much, how shall I put it, contrary to the belief of the martial art when looked upon it. Oh, isn't it hostile? Isn't it something brutal that you guys are doing one with the other? But to the contrary. To the contrary, we get to even enjoy it, don't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
You know what we call it? We call it the spirit of play.
Yeah, I like that.
That's great. And I was going to ask, sorry to interrupt, but I just something that I don't want to forget. And you've mentioned a few people in this conversation, as well as members of your school that was part of the physical activities that you were teaching them, that you have influenced them and became obviously successful people in their own field. Do you recall any event that you were very proud of, obviously, of the success of how you have contributed with that mindset of martial arts to these people? We don't have to mention names, but in terms of story of how you were able to utilize those mindset. Because if like we're here listening and we did a few different podcasts, and some people would say, oh my God, you just sat there and you were just listening, you didn't interact with the person and explain to them. For us as martial artists and the person who wants to empower people and listening to you, it's like watching a fight scene in a movie and you just want to do this.
Yeah, you're just so engaged.
I'm like, it's amazing. It's beautiful, inspirational words that you're saying. And I'd like for people to hear some great stories, if you may have, of the people that you had influence in your life.
Oh, I tell you what, it just, I really feel not only elated when it comes to the point of at least connecting up with those that have, you know, gone and really furthered on what it was of my influence. One particular person from West Melbourne, he started with me when he was just a student at RMIT and going on to Melbourne UT to become one of our leading electrical engineers from Australia that had been posted at Washington, D.C. in the States for a bit, and then transferred, and now having to be a resident professor at the Purdue University in America, right, for the last 30 years, 35 years.
Wow.
He is, you know, like a professor, right? And this guy here started with me at 17 and continued on even up until the day he started over in the States. And now we have a Goju club at the Purdue University as well, and we communicate. But you realize, just on the note of Purdue University as in a prestige location, as what it is of the significance as well. The first man and the last man that landed on the moon were graduates of Purdue University. Purdue University is the renowned university of the
like the elite of the elite.
doctorate degrees. Yeah, they produce the NASA scientists, the space, you know, like travel, etc. And right now, on my last trip 2 years ago, there were 17 countries that were represented in our class, from students that were doing postgraduate study, the likes of doctorate degrees, etc., from the 17 countries, and they want to now having the like the privilege of having to start as well in their own country.
Wow, that's amazing.
I mean, that is just one story.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's great.
Isn't it beautiful that you can make that connection and it's lifelong, like it's a friendship, like you said, it's family. It just stays there forever. It's so important.
Yes, it certainly is. And the one thing that I feel very aesthetic about is that, you know, people, you know, are already charged up into what it is yet that there is to learn. And that happens to be, one of my biggest achievements with people coming and learning when I step out there on the mat to say, okay, this is what it is. Now put it there as what it is. We've got to, like put our thoughts through, what are we to retain from this that I'm teaching you, and that it's got to be maintained by yourself personally. And then you contain this. You contain this to make it part of your.
That's great.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's amazing.
I can actually just visualize and picture you doing that, and it would be so special. It'd be like taking a sponge and just like having you like suck it all up. Take all of that beautiful information, retain it as well as possible, and help as many people, or help yourself firstly, and then all of your family and everyone around you.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you what, it's been a real journey. I go back into the section of the book that I'm writing, where it was that I had created my focal point on how it was to advance in the life that I chose. It was like well before I joined the Marines. Of course, I was still just in my earlier years of high school, and there was quite a lot of suffering that we've endured. I say we, it was from my brother, my sister, and myself. There's three of us. I'm the eldest of three. My mom abandoned us earlier in the years, and we suffered very much with my father, dear father, who was just a sugar plantation worker. Well, over those years, it was something that I used to think about myself, either going one way or the other, becoming radical or becoming something of a rebel. And I used to get away, just go and do whatever I had to do, getting away from all the frustration. I located about a mile away from home, and this was on a hill overlooking where I would see the Pacific Ocean down yonder from where this mountain had been, or this mound of the hill that I call my little refuge. And on that hill, there was this spot where we had the pine tree, like the bonsai, right? But this pine tree, wind blown over, shaping over this, the land of the bit of this hill. And of course, with the pine needles underneath, it was like a fantastic sight. I go there, and that was my escape location, where I look over and I think of the Pacific Ocean and what it was beyond that, and how it had to be that, like I'm going to travel and I'm going to look into this, and how I'm going to become somebody by way of my discovery, etc., arrive. Yeah. And that I did. I did by firstly leaving, going on to the island of Honolulu, our capital island in Hawaii, and took on some work there at the pineapple cannery for a start, and then finally joining the Marines.
That's amazing.
Joined the Marines and traveled, and I even got myself here to Australia. But following that, with all the adventures that I've had, I've already traversed the planet. I've been to 48 different countries, and have done seminars and workshops, and it was something of a challenge. But I discovered, on looking back at all of the time, that the old Marine Corps saying, there's a challenge, you're going to come up against a wall. Well, if you can't go through the wall, go over it.
Over the
You
wall.
can't go over, go around it. You can't go around it, go under it. But you can go through the wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
That's it. That's what we believe. You can do anything within reason if you set your
Yep.
mind to it.
Yep.
You know?
It's incredible because one of the main focus on this podcast today was to focus on a strong mindset. And obviously we talked about doing different podcasts, talking about taking the leap of faith. And, you know, there comes every successful, strong-minded person such as yourself. At one point, we have to take that leap of faith. We just have to do it.
Yeah, we have to have that self-belief that and eliminate the fear, because we talk about fear a lot, and fear inhibits and disables people from achieving.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, it's really something of what I've come to learn about, you know, why in our Goju system, we call it the Sanchin. You know, the Sanchin is the actual basics of what we exercise, all the physiology, all the physiological parts of our, you know, like body with reference to breathing, etc. The main objective to that is understanding why is it titled 3 battles. The battles of what it is of the mind. Then it comes by way of the body, right? And how one looks at the body, what contains in the body, and what is from even in its natural source, the energy point, etc.
So true.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like everything to do with that.
Yeah.
And then the mind, the body, and what it really is of that inner soul, or the likes of what we say, the staying power.
Yeah.
Right? The staying power, the energy source. And how interesting it is that if we take it from the time of our being delivered into this planet by our mothers, right? That we were connected up with our mothers, of course, that cord was cut. And then it was from then on, that we survived what it was of our own needs and wants, survived to stay alive, carried on, even through this very day, understanding that there is a point of our energy source that we've created, that we've always depended on. That was the staying power of what is needed to carry on with what we're doing and how we're going. And
absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. When there's such an imbalance in someone's life, and a lot of people that I work with, they have an imbalance, like something's missing, whether they've got negative dialogue, whether they haven't got the education or haven't had the support, and that throws everything out. So once they find that balance between their mind, body, and soul, that's when they can really start to achieve what they want to out of their life. Be proud of themselves and follow their instincts, because we have that instinctive drive in us.
Yes.
Because we have a calling. Everyone's born with their own calling. It's all different and uniquely different. That makes us so special individually. It's so important to listen to that. A lot of the time we get derailed and taken and used, and you know, like we really need to come back to that central point and focus on what makes us uniquely us.
Yes. You know, this is something that happens to be of a link to how we connect up within ourselves. Like as a prayer, when we say a prayer, who are we really praying to? But what is it that we are, seeking from within ourselves in this direction? And then when this, mind of what happens to be of the overpowering, part of our existence, take on its natural course to just simply be there, something happens. This energy comes over you to replace what has been of the positive and negatives, etc. The negative things to make it positive.
Yeah.
And that's what meditation, I believe, is part of why we are the way we are.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yep. I've seen something of what my father, having to live a very old age, but having to set himself daily, like on a comfortable position where, he had even the natural, like not bush, but like trees or the plants that he grew, etc., around him, and he would just sit there and just simply meditate. And like when he would say to me, "You must, consider the energy out there that you receive as well from all of these live organs out there into you."
Yeah.
How interesting that would be.
That's incredible. That's what we commonly call grounding these days, making sure that we go out into because like our lives are so busy now. There's so much communication and technology, and we're juggling this and juggling that. Everyone has such high expectations on what they need to get done. So that's really important. It's what we've brought into our life recently, for the past few years or more. Just stopping and taking a moment to be grateful and thinking about our breath and the energies around us, because we're all made up of energy. Everything's made up of matter, energy. So that's a really good message. How long would you meditate for every day?
Oh, a good part of 10 to 15 minutes. It's recharging up the battery.
Yes. Yeah.
Recharging up the battery.
Very important.
If you could just, people would know me as well, the ones that have been closely connected up with me when I'm training or whenever I'm doing whatever. I can fall asleep at just moment's notice, just to be relaxed.
Okay.
Whether I'm in a car driving from point A to point B, or being a passenger from point A to point B, or before a class, or even in a class where there's a rest period, I'd sit back and just close my eyes, boom, and I'd be awake again as equally as possible as well. It's something that I've trained with as well in the Marines. We went on patrol or whatever it was that we've had to learn about, being in places that could otherwise be seriously, considered offensive area, etc. So we had to be alert, but you'd have to rest up yourself to energize yourself, etc. So there was
how did they teach you? Can you remember the fundamentals of how they taught you to start to practice that?
Yes, the buddy system. You had to always consider the guy that's next to you as your buddy. You give him a chance to rest, he gives you a chance to rest. And in doing so, what I had noted was, if you concentrate firstly on your location, like say if you're in a dark space, right? This happens to be most locations. If you get down to the lowest position as it's dark and you look up, you will suddenly see that there's lighted, like even what would be, like a radiant thing above that would create you looking at some very positive spots of which you could, remember. And then you close your eyes. At this time, when you close your eyes, you try to recall what you've memorized or what you've seen there. You do that several times. Before long, your mind is just so at ease and relaxed, and just simply, and that also provides a mechanism in your system to be alert. You could have somebody as close as a foot away, and you just feel what it is of that existence. That sort of stuff is what we call, for ourselves, our hey ho. In the Japanese word, like our parameter of defense by way of the mind.
Oh,
that's
wow.
great. I'm going to try that tonight.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Something different in it.
Well, all these audience listening today will have a massive wealth of knowledge after all this. You've obviously contributed to so much. So let me ask you, as I mentioned before, you're so knowledgeable with the experience and knowledge and what you've applied with people, being an influencer, and with the martial arts. What's next? Because you can't stop there. I mean, you got so much to offer. You're mentioning a book before that you're running up.
Yeah, this is something now that I'd like to expand on or give for what it is, right? In the word goju, in the Japanese word goju, it means also 50. I think I mentioned it on our last discussion.
Yes.
50 as a midway point, right? And we consider that when we talk to people like getting up to the age of 50, etc., they would say, okay, I've reached 50. This is a middle age now, so I could perhaps
Oh, good. So I've got some time.
whatever. But what about after 50? Should it be that you should just simply go passive, go, like what it would be, just simply relaxing to the point that you become the couch potato and just forget about life, and then away it goes until you phase out? Well, if it is the word go, you, the hard and the soft, after 50 comes ju, or the soft. It's a new unit of time where the analytical mind, the rational thinking, and that exists to start giving you a new reason for working out what it is, answering to your body's needs, etc., but doing what it is of a new unit in time, learning as you did from the earlier years up to that midway point. And it'll go on. This is where the Jew existence comes in. Now, I use it in what I would use as, my way of the senior citizens training, right? Toshi Ue, that means elderly person, Keiko Ho, the training exercise. So the elderly person training exercise, but this is where I bring in what it is, the staff of life, honest, the art of the cane. And that we will practice then what it is of the softer movements, but also engage in what it is of our martial arts study, and learning why it is that balance is important to, putting yourself into that alignment of where you are, what it is that you can very well handle from your balance, everything to do with your continued existence.
Absolutely.
Well, that's amazing. What's the book title?
It'll call. Well, I always use the word. It's not the style, but the man. But
I like that.
I'm gonna put it yet as I've been looking at what it is of the arcanis, the art of the cane.
It's great. I want to sign copy.
No, we'll pay.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, when we pay, we want to sign copy.
Well, when you see the old fellow, the old fellow with long beard, long hair, and the staff, right? You would consider, that's the elderly or the older person now existing, etc. Well, that's the staff of life. But aside from that, it'll be no longer an older person looking old and haggard as well with the shaft. You're going to be looking young and still energetic.
That's great. He'll take his can and start smacking people around him. That's great. That's amazing. That's obviously been very inspiring to just listen what you have to say, and it's amazing, to be able to have such a great influencer that's still willing to share your knowledge to the younger generation. It's great.
And we can see it, we can just see it in your expression, but you've got such a charisma and aura, positivity, and through your eyes, you can see it. You're such an incredible person.
Thank you. It's I can tell you what, the very things coming from yesterday's Father's Day and everybody. Wow, I couldn't believe how many, likes, etc., are carrying on to greet me, etc. But it is so much as a, refurbishment to the soul. Getting on.
Yeah.
That's it.
And when you put it out there and it comes back, it doesn't have to, but when it comes back, you're so grateful. It's such an honor, isn't it?
My word. My exact word. Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, we're going to have to wrap this up soon, so we can make sure that everyone can listen to it. Thank you so much for being here. Again, I just want to make sure that when your book comes out, where will it be released? I mean, where will it be published? Will it be?
Yes. Michael, actually, Michael Black is working. I mean, we've now gone into the fourth, I think, auditing of the transcripts, etc. And it's just, we've got over 330 testimonials that are trying to be fitted in. Yeah, from all over as well. So it's going to be amazing. I would, and I'm already getting response from everybody everywhere. Hey, you're going to come over here and do a release? And well, with the situation, we will hopefully come on at least by the end of the year, maybe early next year, to see what's happening. Get everybody to know. It's it's the direction of what I've said, the free spirit way.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely be reading it.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you guys. This is great.
Thank you so much.